Warm welcome to the lecture series on the fifth day of Mudrarakshasa. This lecture series is jointly being organized by Samskrutam Committee and Sant Rajinder Singh Ji Chair IIT Madras. I would now request Sri Hari Ganesh Ji to sing the invocation mantra.
Om Namah Pranavaarthaya Shuddha-jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Namah Pranavaarthaya Shuddha-jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Thank you.
Thank you, Hari Ganesh Ji. Now I would request our faculty advisor, Sri Lakshman Rao Mahodaya, to speak a few words.
सर्वेभ्यो नमस्कारः। एतत् प्रवचनशृङ्खला पुनरारभ्यते। पूर्वम् अस्माभिः कुमारसम्भवम् इत्यस्मिन् विषये कन्नन् महोदयेन एव प्रवचनशृङ्खला सुदीर्घतया कृतं। तत्कृते भवन्ताम् आदरणं सम्यक् अस्ति इति महान् सन्तोषः। एतदेव आदरणम् इदानीमपि प्रचलति इति आशास्महे। अतएव इदानीम् अपि यत् आरब्धं तस्यापि सुसम्पन्नं भवतु इति मम प्रार्थना। अस्माकं कार्यक्रमाणाम् आदौ किञ्चित् रुचिरूपेण संस्कृतभाषणं भवितव्यम् इति कृत्वा एव इदानीं संस्कृतभाषायां मम आरम्भः। प्रवचनानि सर्वे अपि आङ्ग्लभाषायामेव भविष्यन्ति। Welcome to all of you. It was very nice that we are able to restart this lecture series by Professor Kannan, who is like an advisor for us in these things. It was a very nice thing that he completed Kumarasambhavam in some way, which spread over almost a year. And we are happy that he has agreed to start these series also on Mudrarakshasam, which is on a slightly different topic. We hope that all of you will give the same support as what you have given to the earlier series by at least coming and attending the thing, and seeing more faces on the thing will give the speaker also a lot of encouragement. So it is very nice that we are starting this again, and welcome to all of you. And thank you to Professor Kannan for agreeing to deliver these series of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahodaya. Now I would request the esteemed speaker, Sri Kannan Mahodaya, to start the much-awaited talk on Mudrarakshasa.
नमस्सर्वेभ्यः। Om Namah Shukra Brihaspatibhyam. These are the words with which the Arthashastra of Kautilya begins. Salutations to Shukracharya and Brihaspati Acharya, the promulgators of Arthashastra, a distinct contribution of Bharatavarsha to the world. भारतीय प्रौद्योगिक संस्थायाः इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी मद्रास संस्कृत समितेः एवंच संत राजेंद्र सिंह जी महाराज चेयर इति उभयोः उपसंस्थयोः आश्रये प्रवचनमालिका इयं प्रचलति। विशाखदत्त विरचित मुद्राराक्षसनाटकम् अधिकृत्य प्रवचनं तावत् आङ्ग्लभाषया भवति। Mudrarakshasa is an excellent play in Sanskrit. If one is asked which are the best three plays in Sanskrit, one would definitely count Mudrarakshasa as one among them. The first play, of course, is Kalidasa's Viśākhadatta, which is undoubtedly an extraordinary play. But the two other plays have caught the fancy of the West the more, namely Viśākhadatta of Shudraka, which is a social drama, and this play, Mudrarakshasa of Viśākhadatta. This is a drama full of political intrigues, and in today's context, this may indeed have some lessons for us to draw upon and apply to our current situation. This will be a series of talks, and today I'll be giving a brief sketch about the author of the play, and I'll start to describe the plot of the play. I know I will not be able to complete even the plot of the play. I'll only cover some portion of the plot. The plot is very complex, and there are more than 30 characters in the play, though not all of them come on the stage. And owing to the complexity of the plot, we will be going a little slowly and try to relish as much as possible of the original here and there. I'll be citing a few lines from the original, and in a subsequent talk I will also be taking up a few enjoyable shlokas and explaining the beauty of the verses in the play Mudrarakshasa. Most of you will be familiar with the Chanakya serial that started in 1991 in the television, in Doordarshan. So it went up till some 47 episodes. I have met Chandraprakash Dwivedi, who produced that serial, and he also told how difficult it was with the then government even to start the program. So there was much opposition to start this serial, and he had of course worked terribly hard for the preparation of the serial, and he said how he had spent more than 2 years studying in libraries and trying to reach out for every material on Chanakya and produce that serial. The reference to this serial is because the latter portion of the serial depends heavily upon Mudrarakshasa, and the serial had to be brought to an abrupt halt because the ruling party then was very much opposed to the theme of the play. So this may give rise to Hindu resurgence. That was the apprehension of the ruling party, because the Bhagava flag would be displayed, and many times students in revolt were shown, students in Samskruta Pathshalas, so the Pathshalas of those times. So that would be shown, and all these things caused quite a bit of not just embarrassment but high apprehension in the mind of the rulers then. And therefore, when things reached a pitch, they almost forced him to bring the show to a halt, and the last few episodes were very much hurried through, and it had to be closed rather quickly. So rather than according to the plan that Chandraprakash Dwivedi had thought of, India has had several civilizational attacks, so right from ancient times, and this is also nothing very surprising. That is because anything good and great will have to deteriorate after some time, and then we'll face a fall. This cyclicity of rise and fall is hinted at even in the Bhagavad Gita. So, where Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham. From time to time there will be dharma glani. Glani is drying up, blighting. So, whenever dharma faces this situation of getting blighted, then the Lord himself descends. This does not mean that we have to keep in wait for the arrival of the Lord. So when difficulties mount, we do pray that the Lord come and repair things. But at the same time, that is not to indicate that we have no duty to perform. In fact, everyone will have to act with great alacrity and wisdom and work hard for the protection of dharma. Today also we are facing a crisis. So this is when the woke people are working very hard to destroy our heritage or bring it a bad name and so on. And it is in times such as these that we need Chanakyas. So hence the need for a review of this wonderful play. Lord Krishna has told, even in the Bhagavad Gita, I recall one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Elsewhere also he shows how even the Yoga Vidya had suffered a serious setback. So sakaleneha mahata yogo nashtaha parantapa, he says. So with the passage of time, a vast period of time, then you find that the Yoga Vidya was lost. Now today there is an apparent proliferation of Yoga Vidya, with our beloved Prime Minister giving a call for the celebration of the International Yoga Day and so on, and yoga and Ayurveda getting highly popularized even in the West. And at the same time, this also involves a good deal of distortion. Not all of what is being passed off as yoga today, especially in the West, is not the real spirit of yoga. And therefore, we must always be alert about the way things get diluted and distorted and how they deteriorate. And therefore, it's only quite in the fitness of things that we must be aware of the problems of the times and our duty towards the same. So there are two types of attacks, one can say. One is the type of the cancerous attack, so which is ruthless and quick in execution, and the other is the diabetes type of attack, so which is insidious, and over a large period of time it destroys the entire body politic. So even so, very distorting ideologies have been afloat in our heritage today, in our country. So even in our educational curriculum, and all present a very distorted picture of the great heritage of our country, and therefore we must be on the alert. This play shows the great acumen and statesmanship of Chanakya. Chanakya is also known by the names Kautilya, sometimes called Kautalya, and Vishnugupta. Actually, of the two names Kautilya and Kautalya, the correct name is Kautalya only, though in this play itself we find a reference to his name as Kautilya, Kutilamati Eshaha. So there is a play on the word Kautilya derived from the word Kutila. Kutila means crooked, and Kautilya is described as a Kutilamati, as a man of high cunning, so as a cunning person and so on. That has to be so, because those who do not really understand the work of great men will definitely mistake them to be otherwise than they are. Kalidasa's Kumar Sambhavam, there is a beautiful statement which says the conduct of the great is something that is different from the conduct of the ordinary folk, and one cannot easily fathom the reasons for the actions of the great. Aloka samanyam achintya hetukam dushanti mandascharitam mahatmanam. And therefore, the ordinary folk, because they cannot comprehend the reasons behind the actions of the great, they are bound to hate the great people. So, such kinds of misunderstanding of the great personalities such as Rama and Krishna has happened not only during their own times but also in later times. So, anyhow, regarding Chanakya and his great work, we need to have a correct perspective, and one of the very good perspectives about Chanakya's life and work and message is given in this play Mudrarakshasa of Viśākhadatta. To give some small bits of information, this play was translated into in Italian first of all in 1871, into German and French in 1886 and 1888, and we have a beautiful edition of Markale in 1900. Hillebrand brought out an excellent critical edition of the play in 1912, and then there are the editions of Abhyankar, Dhruva and Deshpande and so on, with text and translation and notes and so on. So Van Butenin in 1968, he selected two plays. So Westerners are fond of these two plays, especially even the social drama, namely Viśākhadatta, and this play that is Mudrarakshasa, which he translated as Little Clay Cart and the Minister's Seal. Michael Colson also translated the play in 1981, reprinted in 2005. There is also a good source book on Chandragupta Maurya and his times by Radha Kumar Mukherjee, published in 1966. Now, coming to the author, we have a regular problem with most of the Sanskrit authors. Most of them are very reticent. They won't give any details. As I had said earlier, even regarding Kalidasa, we do not know what his true name was, because this looks like a pseudonym or an adopted name, a pen name of the great poet. So it only says, I am a slave of Kali. So that's all and nothing more. So we do not know about even where he lived, when he lived, and so on. So almost every state says that Kalidasa must have belonged to their state and so on. And even so, regarding Viśākhadatta, the author, there have been claims that he belonged to Bengal or he belonged to Kashmir and so on. So the name Datta is a typical ending in many Bengali names, and the names of his father and his grandfather so also end in Datta. So Maharaja Bhaskara-datta is his father's name, and Samanta Vateshwara-datta is his grandfather's name. So his grandfather was a Samanta, a vassal king, and his own father was a Maharaja, was himself a great king. So he hails from a royal family, and therefore he is a person who can be said to understand the political intrigues that take place in royal families and kingly courts. But then we do not know any further information regarding the author himself. So it looks like he was a Brahmana, though his father was a king and all that. So perhaps, so we do not know. So in the last act of the play, this is a play in 7 acts, and in the 7th act we find Rakshasa, an important character, so who was a minister of the Nandas. So he is welcomed by Chanakya. In fact, the entire play is as though about Rakshasa himself. So Rakshasa is not a description of the person, it is the name of the person. And how with the signet ring, the mudra is a ring. So Rakshasa, the minister of the Nandas, so he is made the minister of Chandragupta, so is the theme of the play. The Navanandas, so they were all enemies of Chanakya. Chanakya was publicly insulted in the open assembly. He was made to descend from his seat, and it was then that he took a vow that he would vanquish and unseat and dethrone the Nandas, so and accordingly achieved that. So what happened thereafter is the theme of this play. And this Rakshasa, or also known as Amatya Rakshasa, the minister, the word Amatya means minister. In Sanskrit, the word Ama means together. Even in Amavasya, we have the word Ama, which means together. The time when the sun and the moon reside together, Vasi is to stay. So Vasya or Vasya, staying. Ama, along with or alongside, together, is Amavasya or Amavasya. Both words are correct. So Amatya refers to the person who is always with the king, and therefore Amatya Rakshasa was the trusted minister of the Nandas. And after vanquishing the Nandas, Chanakya knows that obviously Amatya Rakshasa would be very furious with Chanakya and Chandragupta and would be continuously plotting to not just unseat Chandragupta but even slay him. That was the plot of Rakshasa, which is almost apparent. And it was Chanakya's scheme to ensure that Rakshasa be made the minister of Chandragupta. Now, this ambition of Chanakya itself looks very weird. So, how can the minister of an enemy be made the minister of our own king? And why should it be done? Is it not full of risks? So, Chanakya has given due thought to all this and ensures that Rakshasa, who all his life opposed Chandragupta and Chanakya, so ultimately was made to become the minister of Chandragupta, because Chanakya knew the value of loyalty, and Chanakya knew very well the utmost loyalty of this person Rakshasa and if only this person turned out to be a minister of Chandragupta Maurya, then there will be Sthairya of the Rajalakshmi of Chandragupta. Sthairya is steadiness. So Rajalakshmi is known to be very chanchala, so moves from one king to another. And in order to stabilize this royal glory and splendor, what is very, very important is that there should be an able minister who can take charge of things and handle things very well, and who has Duradarshitva, so who is a good statesman and can see what is farther ahead and handle things very well. And how about Chanakya himself? Well, he was there as the minister of Chandragupta, and where was the need for Chandragupta requiring a different minister, namely Rakshasa, as long as Chanakya was there? What we must note here is that the dharma drishti of Chanakya was so profound that he would never hold on to power. He was not interested in power. He only wanted to ensure that dharma is restored and dharma is well established, and whatever is desired, whatever was desirable for the same, so he would arrange for that, but he would himself always remain in the background. And in fact, his own internal pull was towards the performance of tapas, and therefore he was against all pelf and power and propaganda, and he would like to stay away. He would like to live in a simple, humble hut and continue with his tapas, so unnoticed by others. This was the ideal that Chanakya had before himself. So we get a reference to the simplicity of Chanakya in the play also. So, apart from his extraordinary brilliance in being able to anticipate things and prepare the countermeasures and take remedial steps and so on, so we also see him as an utterly simple person. In fact, if there is one epithet that could be applied to Chanakya exactly, that that would be that he is the very embodiment of dharma. So, in the current times, where the ideology of Gandhi has Mahatma Gandhi has ruled the roost for too long, you can see that Chanakya was not um, the person who tore the lines of ahimsa in the way that Gandhi espoused. So, for the protection of truth, in order to fight untruth, himsa will be required. For the protection of dharma, destruction of adharma does become very important. And where it is not possible to do it by pious and peaceful means, well, sometimes a surgical operation is required. So, what is important is that the patient should live. It is not that one should oppose surgical operation on grounds that it involves himsa, and therefore it's only a great act of kindness that such surgical operations are necessary even for society. And the mistake of Mahatma Gandhi was that he tried to apply the rules and regulations that most befit a sannyasin to the ordinary life and to royal administration. The goals of the sannyasin are of course great, but that is not the way in which a country is administered, and therefore Chanakya was very well aware of the duties and responsibilities of a true administrator, and though he was himself utterly detached like a sannyasin, he knew what is the kind of involvement that is required in society. So that is the ideal that he set forth in front of us, and that is why he wanted a person like Rakshasa, Amatya Rakshasa, the minister of his avowed foe, to become the minister of Chandragupta Maurya. And till he accomplishes that, he is not happy and he is not satisfied, and the various devious ways he employs in order to accomplish the same is this wonderful play Mudrarakshasa. There are 4 upayas called Sama, Dana, Bheda and Danda, and Chanakya knew how to employ all these. So in Kautilya's Arthashastra there is a warning again and again that no king should rush to employ the means of Danda. So violence should not be employed. So only after exhausting the means of Sama, sweet words, Dana, so some bribery or gifts or whatever, and then Bheda, so creating fission in the ranks of the enemy. It's only after all these fail and in the self same order, first apply Sama only. So if things can be achieved, well and good. Then only after Sama fails, go for Dana. Only after Dana fails, go for Bheda. And only after Bheda also fails, go for Danda. So till then, it should not be attempted. So to that extent, great restraint on the part of the employer of these 4 upayas is very well described even in this play. And we see that in the last act, when Rakshasa is about to be welcomed by Chanakya, so accomplishing his goal of making him the minister, so Rakshasa would not allow Chanakya to shake hands with him. So he says, "Oh, please don't touch me." So because I have been touched by a Chandala. Namam Chandala sparsha dushitam sprashtum arhasi. So then Chanakya says, "Do not worry. These 2 persons, they are not Chandalas. They are Rajapurushas by name Siddharthaka and Samiddharthaka. They are my people, and it is they who have been deployed here. so in disguise, and therefore we do not have to bother about that. So this sensitivity to the rules of Varna and Ashrama that was being observed those days is very much in evidence in the mind of both Rakshasa and Chanakya and the author of Mudra Rakshasa, namely Viśākhadatta. It looks like Viśākhadatta is a northerner, but we are not sure whether he is a Bengali or a Kashmiri. So the last word of the play, Bharatavakya, sometimes gives some clue about the author. Two places to look forward to getting some information about the author is the prologue of the play and the last portion, the Bharatavakya of the play, and the colophon, the Pushpika of the play. So when you look into these places, we find this information that he is the son of Maharaja Bhaskara and grandson of Samanta Vateshwaradatta in the prologue of the play. And when you come to the Bharatavakya of the play, so we meet with a puzzle there, namely whether it is there is one problem with the reading there, namely where the last words are Parthivas Chandraguptaha or Parthivo Rantivarma or Parthivo Vantivarma or Parthivo Dantivarma. Different manuscripts give different readings, and therefore this confusion is further confounded on account of the varied readings that we get in these various manuscripts of the play, and therefore we are not very certain about what is referred to here. And once again, in whose times was this author? Is it the Chandragupta II? So it seems quite likely as he lived in the 5th century AD. And was it Avantivarma? So there are more than one king by name Avantivarma of Kashmir, and therefore it is difficult to decide. And also the labeling of certain kings is Mlecha kings. Even the Kashmir king is referred to as a Mlecha king, and therefore it's difficult to decide who they are. Both the words Mlecha and Yavana occur in this play, and they refer to foreigners. So there have been various guesses as to who these Mlechas and Yavanas are that are referred to in this play. So could they be Muslims, could they be Christians, could they be the Greek, and so on. So various guesses have been made, and nothing is very clear. So of course, if we look into texts like Manusmriti or Yajnavalkya Smriti, we know how the word Mlecha is in general used to refer to places where Varnashrama Dharma has not been very well followed, or has ceased to be followed, or is not there in any case in full swing, and so on. That is why we sometimes find even, for example, Andhra referred to and described as Mlechadesha, and so on, or the region between Himalaya and Vindhya alone referred to as Brahmavarta, Aryavarta, and so on. So in the Amarakosha we have the statement Aryavarta Punyabhumihi Madhyam Vindhya Himagayoho. Himaga, Aga is Achala, is mountain, so Himaga is Himalaya. So the region only between Vindhya and Himalaya is considered sacred, and so on. It only means that it was there that the acharas of Shruti and Smriti, the Shrauta and Smarta acharas were being followed well, and wherever it was not followed, it was called Mlechadesha, and therefore the geography and boundaries keep shifting. So where this achara has ceased, that is often referred to as Mlechadesha, and such kings who would not pay much regard to these, they were also known as Mlecha kings, and so on. And therefore the Kashmir king Pushkaraksha, who is referred to in the play, is also referred to as a Mlecha. Now there is an astronomical reference right in the beginning of the play. Soon after the prologue, in fact as a part of the prologue itself, there is a conversation between the Sutradhara and Nati, and there is a reference to Chandragrahana. Once again, there is a beautiful play on words. So Chandragrahana refers to lunar eclipse, but it also refers to the eclipse of Chandragupta. And this Chandragrahana by the Ketu, by the two grahas Rahu and Ketu, mythologically represented. So there is this Ketu Grasta of Chandra. So Ketu Grahana by Ketu. Krura Grahasa Ketuhu is the word expression that is expression that is used there in the play. And then there is the intervention of Buddha which prevents this grahana. And obviously there is this Buddha yoga is the word Buddha also means a man of wisdom, and therefore it refers to Chanakya, and therefore now this idea of an eclipse getting prevented on account of Buddha is taken up by Varahamihira, and the date of Varahamihira is 490 AD, and therefore it is surmised that Viśākhadatta must have lived subsequent to Varahamihira, because the self-same idea that is found in Varahamihira's work is shown here. And there is also a reference to Buddhists and Jains in the play, but as this has spanned over a long time in our history, it's difficult to fix the historical details on account of the reference to those terms. Again, the reference to the Mlechas, could it be the Pathans of the 11th and 12th centuries? Could it be the Muslims of 7th century? Could it be the Huns of the Gupta period? So because we get the expression Lechairu Dvijyamana in the play. Another piece of evidence is from the commentaries, none of which is from prior to mid 14th century AD. And there are also anthologies which refer to Viśākhadatta's verses. So Vallabhadeva Subhashitavali and Sridharadasa Sudukti Karnamrta. But these verses are not found in Mudrarakshasa, and therefore we are not very sure. But then Dharika, in his Dasharupaka Avaloka, so it's a commentary on Dasharupaka, so he cites Mudrarakshasa, and his date is about 10th century AD, and therefore we can say that our author Viśākhadatta must have been before 10th century AD definitely, so very likely around 5th or 6th century AD. Viśākhadatta was a great scholar. He had a very good command over Sanskrit, and Westerners have highly appreciated the laconic expressions in Sanskrit. This kind of brevity perhaps is not achieved in any language. Also because of the passive and impersonal constructions that abound in Sanskrit, and the varied types of morphological inflections and so on, the kind of brevity with which Sanskrit authors are able to express their ideas, this is not easily achieved in other languages. And we can see the language of Mudrarakshasa showing his great command over the language, and he is an adept in various prakrits also. So people of very different regions used to speak in varied prakrits, and he employs different types of prakrits. So a mastery of prosody. There are something 17 meters that is employed in Viśākhadatta's play, and that shows his skill in composing verses also. And he was also a thorough master of dramaturgy. So even the technical terms of dramaturgy he employs. For example, the words like Mukha Sandhi, Nirvahana Sandhi are indicated by the expression Kukavikrita Natakasyeva Anyan Mukhe Anyan Nirvahane. So the Mukha Sandhi and Nirvahana Sandhi, the commencement of the play and the conclusion of the play, should have a certain unity. And in the case of an inferior dramatist, the two will be at variance, and Viśākhadatta hints at that, making use of self-same technical expressions, and then the word like Karyopakshepa and so on. So even these are very well indicated there. So a deep knowledge of Arthashastra is also very much in evidence in this work. The work is full of the works of spies and also the royal intrigues and so on. And the very technical terms like Sachivayata Siddhi and then Lekhyapatra and then Arimitra Udasina Vyavastha, these are all technical terms that we come across in Kautilya's Arthashastra. So all these are present there. Sachivayata Siddhi means a person who, a king who has entrusted all his administration to the ministers, and in fact Chandragupta himself was one such. So he was somewhat less bothered about the administration of the kingdom, and it was up to the ministers to take care of every aspect of the administration of the kingdom. And such a minister, such a king whose accomplishments, siddhi, are all dependent, ayatta, upon sachiva, the minister, is called the Sachivayata Siddhi king. And then there is also a reference to the various Arthashastrikaraha, and then there is a reference to the Dandaniti of Ushanas. So all these are very much in evidence in this play. And then even the Sutradhara himself says that he is a master of the 64 limbs of Jyotisha. So we do not know what those 64 limbs are today. So even today we do not know. So the reference to Chandragraha, Ketu and Buddha, and these aspects I have already touched upon. There is also the discussion upon fixing a good time for waging a war, and there is reference to the importance of Lagna and Nakshatra being far, far more important than the Tithi. So that is also discussed. So that also shows that the author had a very good scholarship of even Jyotisha. So in two places we get a reference to the 64.
Got disconnected. Okay.
Continue. Yes. Sorry, there was a disturbance. And the author is also a past master in Nyaya. Even the technical terms of Nyaya are very much in evidence. So, for example, for something to be not a fallacious logic, there are 5 conditions that are required. So, for sound logic, and those 5 conditions that are stipulated in Nyaya Shastra are dealt with here. We do not know whether our author wrote other works, but however there are references to what's called Devi Chandragupta and then Abhisarika Vanchitaka. So all both attributed to one person by name Viśākhadeva, and we do not know whether Viśākhadeva and Viśākhadatta are the same or not. Anyhow, these are all the things that we can say about the author. So roughly post 5th century AD, so probably close to the 5th century AD. So that is his time, and he is a versatile scholar, and the thick plot of the play is very interesting, and we will try to cover some portion of the plot today. So obviously it will not be over in one talk, so we will be making a reference to the text also here and there. There are 7 acts in the play, quite like the 7 acts in Kalidasa's Abhijnana Shakuntalam. So we have 7 acts here. They are called Mudra Labha, Rakshasavichara, Kritaka Kalaha, Rakshasodyoga, Kuta Lekha, Kapata Pasha, and Nirvahana. Now, one of the important ingredients of any acute statesman is the employment of deceit in a proper manner. So 2 acts here are named Kritaka Kalaha and Kapata Lekha. So there is a mock quarrel between Chandragupta and Chanakya, and this is once again to deceive the enemy, and therefore right in front of the public Chandragupta and Chanakya enter into a quarrel. In fact, Rakshasa had anticipated this because he knew that in a sense, Chandragupta had achieved some kind of fulfillment as he now occupied the throne. And Chanakya had now achieved some kind of fulfillment because he had enthroned Chandragupta. And once this is done, there is a typical situation of the two um, getting on not very well with each other, because so far Chandragupta had depended entirely upon Chanakya, and he would no more like to be seen as a person dependent upon Chanakya. And as for Chanakya, he has a feeling that it is he who has enthroned Chandragupta, and he continues to feel that he is the kingmaker, and therefore there is bound to be a sort of a rivalry between the two, and a sort of a mutual irritation with each other. This is what Rakshasa was looking for, and therefore he would make use of this opportunity to strike at Chandragupta and shake the throne. So this was anticipated by Chanakya. So Chanakya's brilliance consists in planning very well and reading other minds. So this extraordinary skill of the reading the others' minds was one thing that Chanakya was excellent at, and we can see how he is a master psychologist and how he handles things, sometimes brutally, sometimes in a very courteous manner, and sometimes in an optimal combination of the both. So this is seen throughout the play. So the opening act is called Mudralabha. There is an accidental acquisition of the royal seal, the signet ring of Rakshasa, and this comes in very handy to Amatya Chanakya. And right in the commencement of the play, he says, well, with this ring in hand, well, Rakshasa is now in my hand, he is now under my control. So therefore this Mudra Labha, how with one small thing he is able to handle an entirely different and difficult political situation is shown in this play very well. In the second act, we have what is called Rakshasavichara, the way Amatya Rakshasa is planning things, and we see that Rakshasa is in no way inferior to Chanakya as regards his political knowledge of political expediency and so on. So the various machinations of Rakshasa and how they are foiled. In fact, towards the end of the play, we get a doubt as to who is the hero of the play. Is it Chanakya or is it Rakshasa? And when we weigh the two in a balance, we can see that in a way, Rakshasa is in no way inferior in skill to Chanakya, only fate was not with him, and so that way Chandragupta was lucky and Chanakya was lucky, and that's how they won. And in this second act, we see how the series of plans of the Rakshasa, so they all come to a null and void, both on account of the fate and on account of the intelligent, astute play of Chanakya. In the third act, there is this Kritaka Kalaha, and I just refer to that. And then in the fourth act, there is Rakshasodyoga. Now, Amatya Rakshasa makes his own intelligent plans to unsettle the whole situation in Kusumapura or Pataliputra, and that is the theme of the fourth act. And in the fifth act, how with fake documents, so how many things are achieved. Chanakya knows how to exploit ambiguity extremely well. So, in fact, right in the first act, the opening scene itself, we see Chanakya. So, as soon as he gets the signet ring, he knows that it is the royal seal, and therefore it has its own stamp of authority, and therefore he gets a letter drafted, so and written by Viśākhadatta, by a person with a beautiful handwriting, and who was a confidant of Amatya Rakshasa, and who was still there in Kusumapura, and makes use of that, leaving many things ambiguous, and exploitation of the power of ambiguity is something that is very much required for politicians and for astrologers and for lawyers. So Chanakya was all these in one. So his knowledge of astrology is also very much in evidence. So people often quote a sentence from Arthashastra saying that what will stars do? So don't waste your time when the enemy is at the gates and so on, saying that Chanakya was against Arthashastra. Exactly the opposite. So Chanakya knew when to employ Jyotisha very well. So he was not against Jyotisha, so he knew how to employ Jyotisha very well. But when the enemy is actually at the gates, then it is in such a situation that the usage of Jyotisha is discouraged. So because time is running out, and this is not the time to keep looking into the pros and cons of things. So it's a firefighting situation, and therefore one must employ all power at one's command to see that the disaster is contained and controlled and put in the proper direction and so on. So therefore Chanakya also knew Abhichara very well. It is said that it is also on account of this knowledge of Abhichara that we find especially in the Atharva Veda. So in Kautilya's Arthashastra, we get a description of a true Purohita who, it is said, must be a master of both Shanti and Shantika Karma and Paustika Karma and even Abhichara. So he must know how to make use of witchcraft against the foe. So even that has a role to play. So that can play a role only when other things are strong. So it's not that by that means alone that things are achieved, but that can definitely come to help. So that can tilt the balance when other things are equal, and therefore the knowledge of that is also very essential for the true Raja Purohita, and Chanakya filled that bill very well. And the power of ambiguity, as I was referring to, is what is exploited in Kapata Lekha in the 5th act. So, and in the 6th and the 7th acts, we see how the most trusted friend of Amatya Rakshasa, so he is about to be hanged, and Chanakya knew very well that it is by making use of that idea that Rakshasa can be brought under control. Chanakya knew very well that if there was a person who is prepared to give his life to save the life of Rakshasa and his family, then it must also be the case that Rakshasa would himself rush to save the life of the person who was prepared to make all his sacrifice for the sake of Rakshasa, and therefore it is this ruse that Chanakya very powerfully employs and very skillfully employs, so in order to get Rakshasa as the minister of Chandragupta Maurya. So all said, Chandragupta Maurya is a sort of an Udasina, as Chanakya rebukes him, though in a mild manner. So he is somewhat indifferent to the fullest details of administration, and it is ministers who must take care of, but otherwise he was a competent administrator, and therefore, though the word Maurya refers to his somewhat low origin, so it is a metronymic, so that is because he is born of Mura, that is the name of his mother, of a lowly origin, and she is also he married to a person in the royal family, and Chandragupta was ill-treated by the Nandas, and as he ill-treated Chanakya himself, Chanakya took a vow in the open assembly that he was going to dethrone the Nandas, and he did carry out the same. And those who have seen the Chanakya serial will know the utter conditions of contrition and poverty in which Chanakya had to live in his earlier phase of life, and how he plans very well the fall of Nalandas, and He says, Samutkata Nandaha Navahridaya Shalyaha Iva Bhuvaha. So these were like 9 barbs at the heart of Mother Earth, and these have been uprooted by me. But Chanakya himself says that, well, I cannot claim that I have uprooted and extirpated the Nandas as long as this Rakshasa, who is known for his utmost loyalty to the Nandas, is alive. And rather than trying to finish Rakshasa, so there were quite a few occasions where the Rakshasa could have been killed, and he ensures that Rakshasa is not slain and he is somehow brought to the situation where he is forced to accept Chandragupta to be his master and become a minister in his ministry. And he knows that once Rakshasa accepts Chandragupta to be his king and becomes a minister, he would serve him with utmost loyalty. So there is a beautiful verse in the play where Chanakya says that there are 3 qualities that are required in the case of persons who serve the king, and namely, prajna and vikrama. So prajna is high class knowledge, so about handling things, and vikrama is courage. But much more than that, what is required is bhakti or loyalty. And we can see that in our own situation today, there are many Indians who are, for example, settled abroad and who have made extraordinary achievements. And one common factor in a good many of them that we see today is the lapse in the factor of bhakti. So Desha Bhakti, so or Raja Bhakti, and so on. So the loyalty to our heritage is what is missing, and that's why we see no shortage of brilliance today among Indians who have made great accomplishments. And this quality of loyalty to one's own country and one's own heritage, that is very well underscored by Chanakya, is what is very much missing and what is very much needed today. And therefore this constitutes the message of Mudrarakshasa. And in our next talks, so we will go through the plot in fair detail and see the relevance of the play to our own times and the need of great statesmen of the stature of Chanakya, or far-sighted, and most of all, his dharma buddhi is what is most important. So on account of his ruthlessness, Chanakya has often been compared to Machiavelli of the West, but we can see one vital difference between Machiavelli and Chanakya, namely that Machiavelli was also ruthless, and that was only for ensuring the safety of the king and the well-being of the king and so on. But then that was not the case with Chanakya. On the other hand, the one supreme thought that reigned in his mind all along is what may be called the dharma buddhi, his loyalty to dharma, and it is that which makes for a healthy society. Unfortunately, the word dharma has been vitiated by translation as religion today, and that is very much distorting things. In fact, in the previous ministry there was a minister by name L.M. Singhvi, who stoutly opposed Indira Gandhi's translation of the term secular as dharma nirapeksha. He said the right translation for secular is pantha nirapeksha and not dharma nirapeksha, because that would be the undoing of the entire heritage, and it is that she precisely wanted. And it is the true restoration of the true dharma. So not the word religion, so not what is conveyed by religion. So in fact, the concept of dharma is better understood as against its opposite, namely adharma, which has not been contaminated. It is the word dharma that has been contaminated. We know that wherever there is an unfair play, so we call it adharma. But when it comes to dharma, we get confused. We speak of Islam dharma, we speak of Christian dharma, and so on. They are all nonsensical. So there is no concept of dharma there. So the true um, meaning of dharma, of that which sustains citizens, dharmo dharayate prajaha, dharma as law, dharma as virtue, dharma as merit, dharma is as what causes punya, dharma as what finally leads to moksha. So all these concepts are embedded in dharma. Dharma is it is a sort of a complex term, primarily on account of our own minds being molded by Western system of education and Western approach to life. So on the other hand, it was something that was very clearly and very fully understood for a long time in our heritage, and it's only in the past few centuries that things have got deteriorated. For example, one must also have a clear sense of hierarchy among the various aspects of dharma. Our own kings, for example, did great injustice to dharma in the name of dharma. For example, Sharanagata Rakshana is a great dharma which Rama himself followed, Krishna followed, and so on. So when a person comes in surrender, comes and surrenders himself, then he must be given protection. That was considered a great Kshatriya dharma. But one must also test the sincerity of the person who is surrendering. So when he is a hypocrite, then the person who gives him ashraya or shelter or refuge must be on his guard. So that is how many Muslim kings would sometimes pretend to be Sharanagatas and would then seek Rakshana, and then they would be waiting for the earliest moment to sabotage the whole royalty and so on. And therefore, one must have a clear sense of the hierarchy of values in society, and this was very evident to Kautilya. So a look into his Arthashastra would indeed show how Kautilya was very clearly aware of the true principles that govern life, that govern society, and so on. And it is the distortion of values and a wrong attachment of weightage to the various aspects of dharma. So it is that which causes confusion, and it is here that we find that Mahatma Gandhi's policies were totally the opposite of the policies that are followed by Rama and Krishna and Chanakya. In fact, my master used to say that Chanakya has been rightly called Viśākhadatta because he is actually a Gupta Vishnu in disguise, so who had come to protect dharma, restore dharma. So it is in this spirit that we must look into the play Mudrarakshasa, so the plot and the intricacies of which we will look into in our coming talks. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Now I think we can open the floor for questions. And so I request all the audience, we have the questions. You can unmute yourself also, and if you are writing in chat box, we'll read it.
Okay, there is one question. What made Chanakya to think that Rakshasa, who was loyal to the Nandas, will be loyal to Chandragupta, who is the enemy of Nanda, as loyalty cannot be transferred from a master to his enemy naturally? The question is excellent, and this forms, in fact, the crux of the play. Now, while on the one hand, Rakshasa was loyal to the Nandas, there is also the dharma buddhi in Rakshasa that was evident to Chanakya, which few others could very clearly perceive. And it is as a part of that dharma buddhi that he would shift his loyalty to Chandragupta equally. So we can see his dharma buddhi, for example, in the case of Viśākhadatta. So Chandanadasa, for whom he was prepared to give his life. And once it was clear that what Chandragupta did and what Chanakya did was according to dharma, then Rakshasa himself would be convinced and he would accept the loyalty of Chandragupta. and he knew that the approach of Chanakya was, while it is personal on the one hand towards the Nandas, on the other, it was very much in evidence that the Nandas did not rule according to dharma in a proper manner. In fact, in one of the scenes in the first act of the play, when Chandanadasa has been summoned by Chanakya, and Chanakya intelligently entangles him in a discussion, so and demands loyalty from Chandanadasa. Then Chandanadasa asks, what is the price to be paid? What is it that you expect? And Chanakya says, this is not the rule of Nandas, who would be gratified by the payment of some amount. On the other hand, what is required is true devotion. So that way the Nandas had themselves become corrupt. And it is not that Rakshasa did not know of this, that certain deterioration had set in there. And on the other hand, the rule of Chandragupta and Chanakya would definitely be in accordance with dharma. And once he would accept the loyalty of some person, this Chanakya achieves very well, making use of the very strengths and weaknesses of Rakshasa. And once it is accepted, he would never swerve from that. So Chanakya knew this very well. Another question that has been asked by Devendra Jalihal is a question that is not easily answered. Normally the word Rakshasa is associated with demonic people, Ravana being the prime example. Why is the Amatya called Rakshasa here? Are there any other similar examples where bad words are used to describe good people? Of course, in our own times, I can give you one one or two Kannada example of very pejorative words being used as names. You have all heard of the name of DVG, DV Gundappa. Gunda just refers to a piece of stone. So a round piece of rock is called Gundu. And why would person be called that? Or persons being named Tippe Swami or Kuppu Swami. So these are words which are very derogatory and very pejorative. Now it is said that during tough times, for example, especially during the times of plague and cholera, when many children would die, so those days we used to have very large families, and having a dozen children was a very casual and nominal thing, and many children dying was also very common. So I personally knew in my previous generation, a dozen children in a family was not a rare thing, and when so many of them would die on account of some of these contagious diseases and epidemics where people would die on a large scale, mothers would lovingly name their children with something exactly opposite. So Tippe and Kuppe mean the dirt of things and so on. So we do not know whether it was the same spirit that this Rakshasa was so named. There are no clear indications in the play itself as to why he was named Rakshasa, but then he was a very brilliant man and he was respected by Chanakya. You mentioned that, so there is another question by Karmal Karji. You mentioned that Chanakya sought to develop Rashtra Bhakti or love for the nation. What exactly was the concept of nation then? Just the king's kingdom, or people of the kingdom, or the king? There is another question. The Rakshasa motif in the Vedas is not exactly used to denote an Avaidika Prakriti, but merely of baser vasanas, right? So that can also be possible. The concept of Rashtra, I think we must reserve for a future lecture. So in Arthashastra, so the word Rajya is regularly used. Rashtra refers to the geographical boundary more often, and the word Rajya is regularly used for the state, and we will touch upon some of these questions again in our future talks. Namaskar.